Hey everyone, welcome to this very special event screening of Funny Boy and in conversation with its incredibly talented writer and director and my friend. I'm very proud to call her my friend Deepa Mehta. Hi Deepa. So congratulations to you and the cast and the crew. It's an extraordinary film, and Sting and I were so happy to play even a small part in making some of it possible. And I believe it's a story that needs to be told on film. And you've always had a dedication to telling stories about conflict and human rights. So it's a question that I long to ask you through a few films of yours that I've seen. Were you influenced by any political conflicts in your own life, and what has called you to tell these stories? Because you live in Canada now. It's an egalitarian political democratic system. Has this sort of freed you up to tell more complicated and some might say controversial stories? Has it loosened your tongue, as it were?
So, Trudy, I was greatly influenced by what happened to my parents, because when India was divided by an arbitrary line, when the British left India in 1947, and it was divided into India and Pakistan, my father, who came from Pakistan, which was Pakistan, and came to India, had horror stories to tell about what happened during that transition. And he had many Muslim friends who left India to go to Pakistan. So sectarian war and violence were my bedtime stories. The tragedy of what happens when arbitrary decisions are made to separate people, when divisiveness happens. So I've sort of, my bedtime stories were, like I said, were that. And it was something that I always, I think it stayed with me. I never heard about Cinderella. I heard about the dead bodies that came from one country to the other. And I think it must have had an effect on me, because I said I'd never want to do anything with films ever again, because everything was so. It was like a something that was unraveling always before my eyes, and then it was much later that I decided that perhaps those bedtime stories had a moral in them, but they were strange bedtime stories, and that's what drew me to them. My bedtime stories.
Yeah. So this adaptation of, am I saying his name out? Shyam Salvadorai. It's
Mhm.
it was his deeply personal to him, and a huge best-selling novel. And you worked together on the script. How was that working was in the co-authoring way? Something that you don't normally do.
Uh, in fact, it was very interesting. The book is 22 years old, and is a deeply personal story. Sham wrote it when he came to Canada with his family. They were Tamil. His mother is Sinhalese, actually, and his father is Tamil.
Ah,
And, and he came out as a queer young man when he came to Canada. And he wrote this book about like 4 or 5 years later. He doesn't know a word of Tamil. It's very interesting. And the book is very pro-Tamil in that sense that it tells the story of what happened to the Tamils because not many people know what happened in that civil war in Sri Lanka for 26 years. So he took that and his own experience. His family had to flee from Sri Lanka, like many Tamils did. And it was a very interesting time. I mean, how do you work with somebody whose story is so personal to them? Like every word was like something out of like a categorical imperative that he could not let go of it. And so finally, it was it was like a lesson in for me in how to work with somebody who's so attached to his book, because it's his story, and yet is not cinematic. And we found a way of learning each other's language. So I think that's what happened. It wasn't, oh my God, this is a perfect collaboration. It was I'm learning
And
from
do you
you,
mean
and you're learning.
emotional language and
I'm
cinematic
talking about
language rather than,
yes, I'm talking about
yeah,
emotional language. You're right on.
yeah,
It is totally an
yeah.
emotional language. You know, what really
So,
pained him, what
and I
made him
believe
grow. Yeah.
you shot it exclusively in Sri Lanka, which is a physically gorgeous, gorgeous country. I've been there, and I mean, it looks so lush and so opulent, and so this sort of juxtaposition of the rich Tamils and the very
Mhm.
poor Sinhalese. It's sort of like it sort of hits you in the face. Um, did you actually have any challenges in recounting that part of the history in the very spot where that history took place?
First of all, we had a very difficult time in in getting permission to make the film. Uh,
Right.
I don't know if many people, I think you know, Trudy, that to make a film, even in India or in Sri Lanka or in many countries in Southeast Asia, you need the permission of the government. So the government looks at the
Mm,
script, and if they feel that in any way it's detrimental to the image of the country, they will not give you permission to make the film. Funny Boy was a very popular book and an extremely important book in Sri Lanka. So we thought we wouldn't have any problems, especially since Sham is a beloved author. The book is a beloved book, and he had co-written it with me, and he's introduced me to many Tamil actors, etc. And we were really surprised because the government said no. It took 1 year to get permission to shoot that script. So that was the initial
really?
difficulty, and that should have really told us that maybe this journey is not going to be very funny at all. Sorry for the bad pun, but it was very difficult. It was really really tough, and especially we did the scenes that are about the civil war itself, and the carnage that happens just outside Colombo. Because I think if we had done it in Colombo, we might have had some problems. But everything was a challenge. It wasn't an easy film to do. I wish that we shot Water, which is the film that I did. You like very much. Thank you so much for that support. And it was shut down in India, and we actually shot it in Sri Lanka. So maybe if we had
You
shot
shoot. You
Funny
shot.
Boy in
You
India,
saying you shot
we have,
Water in Sri Lanka? Did you? That's
yes, we did because we didn't get
I.
permission to
I
shoot
didn't
it
know
in
that. That's my
in
favorite
India.
film of yours. Yeah, and that I didn't
There,
know it was shot in Sri
thank
Lanka.
you.
Right.
Yeah,
Gosh.
yeah,
And were the
yeah. So
locals, because you used a lot of extras as well as your brilliant talented leads? Was the were they on side with making the film? Was there any political unrest actually on set?
no, none at all. In fact, for
Good.
many of them, it was very interesting because for many of it was a mixture of Tamils and Sinhalese. The Tamils are still, I think, discriminated against, and it's difficult for them. But I think it gave an opportunity. I mean, maybe I'm being naive, but many of the Sinhalese extras felt that they actually had heard stories about what had happened, when in the 1980s in Black July, which was the period that's captured it, but hadn't lived there. So they they felt really empathetic and and stunned by what had happened or what had been done to the Tamils. So that was a fascinating aspect which I didn't expect at all to hear them talk about that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it is very educative. A lot of people in the US have been talking about your film a lot today, and a lot of people that I've spoken to actually don't really know the history. And there's a sort of like the Tamil Tigers, they're kind of like they were the bad guys. It's like, well, no,
Yeah.
they were not the bad guys. They were the ones that were, rebellious, and rebellious is not bad. It's actually usually defending oneself. Um,
Yeah, and they have
anyway,
to,
it's a very rich and remarkable film that sets this piece of history, I think, in such a coherent and accessible way through this love story. So what's so, I think, brilliant about it is you bring this love story between not just a young pair of boys who are in love with each other, but also with with the couple who are from Senegalese and from Tamils that are attracted, because when we love, we love. Love conquers all and is unconditional, and I think that this really rings out in this story, and we as humans need to get to that, don't we? So on that note, I believe it's still technically a criminal act to be an LGBTQ person in Sri Lanka. So what has the response to a film been to that to that challenge? It's and upsetting reality? What have you what has come out from that?
It's been interesting. It is still a criminal offense to be gay, queer, or LGBTQ in Sri Lanka. But what I did, which I really wanted to do, Trudy, was that before anybody saw the film, I wanted the Sri Lankans to see it. I wanted them to be the first viewers of the film. And so a mixture of, so the 5 actors who were there in Sri Lanka had underground screenings and called 5 or 6 people that were from different areas. You know, some of them are human rights activists, some were Tamil activists, some were cricketers, some were actors, some were painters, some were housewives, some were housemen. It was a real mixture of ages. And we had about like 5 underground screenings at the same time. And the question, and the only question I had from them was at the end was that how did it reflect? How did the film reflect in for your memory and identity? Those are the only things. I mean, these weren't to get a reaction about what is the review. It was more, did it resonate with you internally as far as your identity was concerned, as far as your memory was concerned? And it was fascinating to get their response. The response was they were stunned because I think that they never thought, they hadn't seen a film, even though the book was very popular, which actually showed what happened with the genocide. Not only the LGBTQ area, which is a very important aspect of it, but in fact, that how one kind of uh, divisiveness leads to another kind of divisiveness. If the LGBTQ area was about not going the distance, the civil was also reflecting in exactly that, not meeting. There were no bridges. And all of their responses were, where are the bridges? When is this going to stop? When are we going to start loving, which is what you said earlier, and stop hurting each other, So that was the general reaction. And of course, like you said, not people know what happened.
Sorry, Deepa, finish your thought. Sorry.
I did. I said, like you said, not many people knew what, and still don't know. And now perhaps with the film are getting to know what happened with this, a civil war that lasted for 26 years and was, a horrific genocide. And on another level, the lack of self-determination of wanting to embrace your own sexuality, and to celebrate it.
How many people were killed actually during that period?
I know that there were more. I don't know the exact number because nobody does, in fact, perhaps, but around 1 million people were displaced and many were killed, hundreds and thousands.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
To be decimated
like
that in a whole,
it's huge,
and the culture.
And important that we remember it. And I think remembering wars should be required learning.
It should be. I mean, and also, but I think that for me also the film is also about love. It's also about the importance of love and how we can actually use it. And if that should be our goal, shouldn't it be? I mean, as humanity, as we see it as falling apart towards, then it's so important that we learn self-determination We learn how to, we imagine another world. How can we imagine being together if we can't imagine somebody else and how they live?
Well, I think
It's
that
about
totally
humanity.
shines through in the film. It's of course we have a walk through the history and see it unfolding through these families, but most of all we really feel the humanity. And I think that when we as humans can feel and are in touch with our humanity, we look at turf wars and not my God but your God. It's just really so stupid and futile that what really is unconditional is the love that we can feel for each other. That's what you've portrayed
It has to
so
start somewhere. We have to start.
so
Well,
beautifully.
you were so helpful. Thank you so much, because I have to tell you that song and that dance, that was the only time the two actors were petrified. I mean, they were such wonderful actors, the two young, lovely guys, and who one of them who plays RG is actually, who had the courage to come out in Sri Lanka in this terrible climate where it's a criminal offense. He was just so brave and so courageous, and really went for the role. But when I told him he had to dance to Sting's Every Breath, he just became wooden. He was so scared. He said, I don't know if I can do this. I said, what do you mean? You've done so much. You've kissed the guy. You've done everything. He said, I don't know if I can dance. He said, I can't do it. It's my favorite song. It was so sweet. And thank you so much for getting it for us.
It's
Because
such a moving scene. And Sting came in and said, I want to see the scene, show it me. And so we played it again, and he was very moved. He said in all in all of the ways that I've seen or I've imagined that this song might be used, because people play it at weddings and funerals, and he performs it for sometimes, for Valentine's Day and blah blah blah. But he said this was such an important moment and an emotional moment for him, and he sends you his love and congratulations. He was very, very
oh,
proud to have been part of it. And talking of your RG, the wonderful Brandon Ingram, how did you cast him, and how did you find him, and what was it like working with? I mean, he's such a talent.
he's amazing. You're a fabulous actor yourself. So he's a complete method actor. This was his first film. He's done a lot of theater,
Was it?
but this was his first film. Yeah, and he loved the book, and he just went for it. What we did was, which is very important, and I think which is helpful, and which I do for all my films, especially for this one, it was important, was we had a 10-day workshop, which wasn't based on the script, but was based on the characters, how to develop the characters, and so the main cast got together, and we spent 10 days just going through every aspect of the character and the growth of the character and how the character could be interpreted. And I think that helped all of them, and especially it helped Brandon. I mean, I found Brandon through Sham, the writer who knows many of the actors, and we had a huge we looked for Tamil actors here, because I think it is very important that's for Sham that the actor who played RG was gay. That was extremely important to him. And it was important for me that it would be wonderful if we could find a Tamil and a gay actor, because then it just becomes sort of organic. And we couldn't find anybody here. It was very interesting. Couldn't find, even though it has a large population. We looked at people, and then we had another search in in Sri Lanka itself, and there were two or three really good Tamil actors, but uh, they weren't. They were slightly nervous about working in a film that you know
Yeah.
that that was gay, because I mean, so Brandon is not
This is
Tamil; he's a burger. So he's Sri Lankan. His family is descended in intermarriage between Sinhalese and the Dutch and the Brits, and but he's Sri Lankan, and I thought, no, I just want somebody who's really, really good. And his audition was mind blowing. He just became RJ. And
Yeah.
that's what a director wants, you know. And so we got half of what we wanted. And I thought, yes, you know, you can't get everything as a director, even how much you want to. But to have an actor who was superb, who actually wore uh, the persona of the character
He
was
really did. But
extremely.
I think chapeau to you. All the acting was just so good. They're all extraordinary. Um, and you know your technical team. You've had
Mhm.
wonderful Teresa Font as editor, and the music was fantastic. Howard Shaw. Um, so what was it like working with them? Is that the first time that you've collaborated with either one of them?
Yes, it is the first time. I mean, Howard is. I've always wanted to work with Howard. He's a Canadian, and you know,
Yeah,
yeah, and I didn't know whether he'd say yes, you know. But he read the script and he said, "I'll do it," just like that. And then I thought, "Wow, this is amazing." David and myself went to see him in Rotterdam, and we had a lovely dinner together and we talked about it, and he said what he heard was uh, I said I hear something really simple for this film, and he said what kind, can you give me a reference? And I said, you know, bicycle thieves perhaps. And he said, yes, I get
yeah,
it. And that was it. I mean, he, you know, he and the what he's produced is so simple and so beautiful. And it's,
really
I
is.
mean, and simple things, you know, Trudy, are really complex and are the toughest to do. And, you know, and he got a flute player who was an Indian flute player who was living in Switzerland. He just, this was during the pandemic. And I remember David asking me, if you had, we finished the film, and he said, if you had the opportunity, who would you like to edit it? And without a blink, I said, Teresa Font, because I loved what she did in Pain and Glory for Almodovar. I mean, what an amazing job! And he said, "Yeah, dream on." But again, we sent her the script, and she loved it, and she said, "I have the time." So we went to Madrid. We were there for 3 months, and we actually edited it in Madrid, in Teresa's living room. And it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, working with such a wonderful, brilliant, editor. And it's the same thing with a cinematographer, you know. But I
And so
think film is
was
really,
any of this during the pandemic? Was the edit
all of this was
process, was that last?
all of this, all of this was during the pandemic. In fact, that we got the last flight out of Madrid to Toronto, uh, before the huge shutdown. I mean, the shutdown was already happening. The pandemic was happening in Spain already. So, and the music, all the post was all done during the pandemic, and it was we were our studios were booked in Sri Lanka to do the dubbing, because we had some Indian actors whose Tamil is really awful, so we had to redub it. But we couldn't. There was no way we could fly there. So finally, we had to get actors from Toronto, and who were Sri Lankan and Tamil, and who dubbed for us. It was horrific. My God, this movie has not been funny at all. I mean, I keep on saying there's nothing funny about Funny Boy. It was the toughest film we ever made. It really was,
Well, it
and
might
it's
not
such a
have been
joyful one.
funny to make, or it's not really funny to watch. It's really heartbreaking, but in the end, incredibly hopeful. And I think that is a great symbol too for the way that we're emerging from the pandemic. Hopefully, that we've learned a lot, all of us, with what we can do when we're restricted in so many things. We have to, I think, go inwards and really think harder and in a more profound way. We have to be, I think, just much more generous with each other, give more time to each other. I've certainly learned so much during this time. Have you? I'm sure.
I've learned the one thing that I learned. I mean, first I thought I'm going to learn how to knit, because my mother was a great knitter. So I said, I have to learn how to knit. I must do something. Or maybe I'll perfect my yoga, or maybe I'll learn how to do different kinds of meditations. I have done nothing, absolutely nothing, but except maybe thought about uh, about my life, maybe, and said that perhaps the people I've hurt. I mean, this sounds so stupid, but I've been thinking about,
No,
yeah,
it
let me
doesn't
just
sound stupid
reach
to
out.
me. It
Mhm.
sounds like you're in the place where a lot of people, I think, have been. I think that's true of me too. What do you know, what is important really, as opposed to what you think, what you've always thought was important. The fast lane, has always been
Yeah, yeah,
important, because it's like, what can you achieve and how quickly can you achieve it? And it's
yeah.
that has fallen away.
It really has, and I think it did. I mean, so I didn't. I think that's what I learned. You're absolutely right. I mean, it was very important to think about, to reach out to people that I might have been inadvertently or advertently hurt them in some way or something. I mean, I just felt that life was actually is very short, and it has to be focused. And in order to use that time, I had to self-reflect, and it's not easy. It wasn't easy, and I don't want to sound so soppy around here, but well, I didn't learn how to knit. What can I say? That's it.
What did you knit?
Zero.
I want to see it one day. Is there anything else you want to say about Funny Boy that you think is important for the folks to hear, and when they're seeing it? What is the
Mhm.
message that you want for them to take home?
I didn't know if I'm much of a message person, but I really do believe that every human being has a right for self-determination. And if there's anything that this film can do or should be able to do, is to bring into focus the human right for self-determination. We should be able to lead our lives the way we want to, whether it's the sexuality, whether it's the class difference. We have to build bridges, because if humanity has to survive, we have to learn how to love. That's, I guess,
Mhm.
the soppy message of the film.
It's
It's
not the
important to
human
me.
right for self-determination. I think that's a great distillation of what you've brought to the screen, Deepa. So many congratulations. I
Thank
absolutely
you so much.
love this one. I
And
love
thank
all your
you.
films, but this one has got a big place in my heart. So
Thank
Megan,
you.
thank you very much for having us along
Thank you,
today.
Megan, for thank you so much. And Trudy, thank you so, so much. And please thank Sting for me. My God, that song has become like
He's
a
already
hit.
said it was an absolute pleasure. He's very proud of this one.
Well, thank him, and
Say
thank you,
hi to
darling
David
Judy.
for me,
I
and
will,
we'll
I
we'll
will, and thank you
we'll
so
we'll
much.
talk soon.
And
Take care of
we will
yourself.
talk soon. We will read soon. Okay.
Okay, good. Good
Okay,
pleasure.
great. Thank you, Judy. Bye bye. Ciao.
Bye, Deepa. Bye.